Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Suffer Up podcast with Nate and Ryan and our new friend Dave here. We'll get to introduce Dave here in just a moment. Before we get started, we want to introduce who we are here at Suffer Up. We are Suffer Up, where our mission is to encourage and lead others to suffer with a purpose. We strive to help others level up in life with an emphasis on spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. If you guys are regular listeners to the channel, we appreciate you tuning back in, as I know this will be an exciting episode for you. Before we get started, we want to give a very special thank you and shout out to our three major supporters and sponsors of this channel. First and foremost, Soft Socks. They make a compression fitting toe sock for your feet that hugs your feet in all the right places and prevents blisters from your feet. If you run ultras like we do, or if you're just a hardworking individual out there sweating and working hard, they will help protect your feet and promote good foot health. If you'd like to try a pair, you can go over to our link tree in the description of this podcast. All of our sponsors are listed there, and use discount code SUFFER10 to receive 10% off at checkout. They're also an American-owned company and veteran-owned as well. Second on the lineup here is going to be 55 Miles Anti-Chafing Lubricant and Blister Blocking Cream. They make everything from chapstick, UV blocker, blister blocker, and anti-chafing cream. We use them on pretty much everyday life, anytime that we're out in the heat, to protect our bodies and our feet. If you'd like to try some of it, you can go over to our link tree as well. Use discount code SUFFERUP. And also new to the lineup that we're really excited to bring on, and that is Muckender's Wipes. They're a newer company where their mission is to provide a very durable towelette for the hardworking Americans out there, as well as we use them on our trail runs to clean up after a trail race or just a training run before we get back in the truck. The ingredients are plant-based and are good for your skin, and there's no harsh chemicals in them, so we love them as well. Me being a fireman, I also use them after cleaning up after a hot fire. So we're thankful for their partnership. You can use discount code SUFFERUP as well to receive a discount at checkout. So thank you so much to our sponsors, but we also want to say thank you, Dave, for coming on here, the Suffer Up podcast channel, and joining us where we can share your story. We understand you have an incredible story, an incredible journey, and now you travel and do public speaking from what I understand. So Dave, if you could just please give an introduction of who you are and a little bit about you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. So my name is Dave Sanderson, and for 38 years, I was a sales executive, a salesperson, a sales executive for primarily in the technology world. I was also, for 10 of those years, head of security for a gentleman named Tony Robbins. So I had the opportunity to have access and learn from him directly and serve his mission. But then on January 15, 2009, that whole thing sort of started shifting my life when I became the last passenger out of the plane that crashed in the Hudson River, known as the Miracle on the Hudson. And so since that time, I continued to work for the next few years until I figured the pathway to get out of working for somebody and working for myself and really finding what I call the four freedoms: freedom of time, money, mission, and relationships. And that came through speaking. And I've had the opportunity and pleasure and privilege of speaking to over 1,700 audiences around the world on 4 continents. I've personally authored 3 books, co-authored 1 book, and currently in the middle of publishing my 4th book, ready to do that currently. So not only do I now speak, but I also work with organizations and people to help them turn what I call their disruption into their competitive advantage, using the frameworks that I actually re-engineered, not only from my sales career and time with Tony Robbins, but that day on the Hudson River, because that's really, guys, that came down to, that was actually a business lesson that day on how to handle your mind and your situation based on how to do that through a crisis. So that's a little bit about what I do, what I've done, and what I continue to do, and how I serve people.
Very cool. Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about your life before all that, like your upbringing and where you grew up and how you ended up working for Tony Robbins in the first place?
Yeah, thank you. So I started out in Southwest Ohio, right outside Cincinnati, and that's where my preteen lives were. Then my dad got transferred to Northern Virginia, so that's where I was pretty much raised the rest of my life, in Northern Virginia. I was very into athletics, football, basketball, track, baseball. So I did all the different sports. I would say I was good. I wasn't great at any of them, but I was very competitive, which led me to an opportunity to go to a place called James Madison University in Virginia, where I majored of the BBA, the Business Bachelor Administration for international business, which my goal was to get to be an international business person, sort of like a James Bond kind of guy. But unfortunately, back in the early 80s, when we were going through a recession, that wasn't in the liking. So that took me to my first job, which my dad helped me get because he wanted me out of his house after 30 days after I graduated from college. I was not out of his house. So he helped me get my first job as a second assistant restaurant manager at a place called Howard Johnson. And that, that was a eye-opening experience for a number of reasons, especially when you're a low man on the totem pole. But that actually turned out to be probably one of the biggest blessings in my life, because there's a gentleman that came into my life at that point. His name was Bill. In 1983, he was 77 years old, but he over the next 13 to 14 years, he became my mentor. And I found out through that experience that he actually had owned over 80 movie theaters and restaurants in the Carolinas since the 1920s. So he was a very successful business person. And for 13 to 14 years, he mentored me on how to be successful. And I mean, it was a great lesson and great experience. And during that time, I was also transitioned from restaurant management to be in sales and sales management with companies such as ADP and Oracle and KPMG and PeopleSoft. So I was primarily in technology. But in 1997, right before he passed away, he gave me his handwritten notes he wrote down in 1929 how to be successful, and made me promise him to Kaylee. He said, do not let this die with you. So this has happened in 1997 when I really, I was being successful in sales, but at that point, I really didn't know what I had on my hands. But that was also the year that Tony Robbins asked me to be his assistant head of security, and then a couple of years later, as head of security. So I actually had the opportunity to help him with his mission, to be able to help people around the globe and travel. So I got the opportunity to travel with him and learn from his experiences likewise. So my next venture came into my life. And then through those next about 10 years, that happened in 2009 is when the experience of the Miracle on the Hudson, the plane crash that went down in the Miracle on the Hudson. You may have seen the movie Sully, the entire experience. So that happened. I was the last passenger out of that plane. So now that I had that experience, I knew my life had to change, but what do I do? And all of a sudden, a couple of years, about a year and a half later, I found these notes from Bill that he gave me, and that set me on the journey I'm on right now.
Very cool. If you could, Dave, so walk us through kind of preemptively the day before. Is there something else we were going to hit before? Cool. So walk us through that day. Where were you headed? What were you on a business trip? Were you seeing family? And then, but before we dive into that though, was the movie Sully close to being accurate?
That's a question I get a lot. I think that Clint Eastwood did an amazing job.
Okay.
There are some liberties I'm sure that he took.
Sure.
But for the most part, I think about 80 to 90% of it was very accurate. I think he nailed it. I think and I think Tom Hanks did an awesome job as Captain Sullenberger. So yeah, I think they did an amazing job with that movie.
Oh, great. Yeah, because you always wonder, like, was this actually close to what happened? But it's good to hear that that's a pretty close account of what happened. So walk us through kind of what started that day, where were you headed, and the preemptive flight for you.
Yep. So yeah, I was actually at the end of a 3-day business trip that I started in Sarasota, Florida, that Tuesday. And the next day, on Wednesday, we were actually in a manufacturing plant in Petersburg, Virginia. And that evening, we packed up and headed north to New York City, because the next day we were going to be in a distribution center in Brooklyn, New York. So in a distribution center, which I don't know if anybody here who's listening has ever worked in one, but they normally open up quite early in the morning. Most of it's three 24-hour shifts, right? Mm-hmm. But this one, we went in about 5 o'clock in the morning. So we got because we wanted to see how everything was going, because we were building a distribution system for their organization. So we got done early. We got done about 10 o'clock. So I'm like, I get to go home early today. This is great. So I called our travel agent to work with her, and she put me on flight 1549 because it was scheduled about 2:37 that afternoon. Mm-hmm. But it was delayed, right? It was delayed, but that's typical for New York in the winter, right? That's no big deal.
Sure.
Yeah, I wasn't even supposed to be on that plane. I was scheduled on the 5 o'clock flight that night.
Oh, wow.
So I was put on that plane because there was a few extra seats, and with my status at U.S. Airways, I was a chairman. They got me on that plane, so I wasn't even supposed to be on that plane.
Oh, that's wild.
Of the events that day, what stands out to you as the most memorable thing before the landing in the river, and then after that moment?
Yeah, I think the most impactful thing before is when I heard the explosion. When the birds hit, we didn't know at that point it was birds. We just heard a big explosion, and I think that was the moment I realized something had happened. But I've been on planes. I fly a lot, so noises on planes really don't get to me too much. But I think it was so quiet on the plane you could hear a pin drop, and I think that was like the moment that I realized something's going on. But I don't think anybody knew at that moment what the seriousness of what really did happen. So that was the moment, during the flight, I think I remember the most because, you would think most people would start, freaking out or getting a little vocal or getting nervous. But it was so quiet to hear a pin drop.
Wow.
Wow.
And then after the, what transpired from then on, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, the captain didn't, he banked because he was going back to LaGuardia. So, I felt him banking, so no big deal. But when I looked out the window, the skyline of Manhattan was actually, above us. So we were actually below the skyline of Manhattan.
Wow.
So I knew something was going on, but it wasn't until the moment he said his famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact," that I knew something serious was going on. And that's the moment I think everybody that played knew it. This is probably not going to turn out really well. Because at that point, he was just clearing the George Washington Bridge. He only cleared it by roughly 1,000 feet.
Wow.
So if you look at, if you know anything about the George Washington Bridge, the bridge is actually 600 feet high, and he was 1,000 feet descending. So he was roughly about, I cleared about 400 feet because he was 1,000 feet, the bridge is 600 feet. So we cleared the bridge by roughly 400 feet. Now you're heading straight nose into the river. So you better get what happened to me, I need to get my ducks in a row pretty quick. I made to make sure I was cleared with the big guy up top. So I want to make sure that if I had anything out there that needed to be cleaned up, now's the time to get it done because in the next matter of moments, I may be up with him. So that's what was going on for me as we were clearing the bridge and heading straight into the Hudson River.
And where were you seated on that plane? Were you front, middle, back? Where were you sitting?
I was seat 15A. That's 4 rows behind the left wing of the plane.
Okay.
So I could actually see the engine when it exploded. And so when I looked out, you could see the fire coming out from the left wing. So I was on the left side of the plane, 4 rows behind the left wing.
Wow. Okay. So you hear the words "brace for impact." You mentally get ready for the impact. You say a prayer, and shortly from the time, as memory serves you best, from the time that you heard those words to the time that the plane hit the water, how long do you think that was roughly?
It was roughly 60 to 70 seconds.
That quick? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's when you watch the movie, which is the only thing I have to comparison to, it seems obviously a lot longer because of the thematics behind it, but that's like zero time.
Well,
like
it seems a lot longer. In the middle of it seems a lot longer.
Yeah,
60 seconds is a long time when you're looking out a window and all you're seeing is a plane going straight into a river.
Yeah. Okay. So then the plane makes impact. What was the reaction of everybody on the air? Was there panic? Was there calmness? How did everybody else react?
Yeah, when it hit the river, it was a hard impact. I heard him. He said he estimates he doesn't know for sure, but he estimates he hit between 110 and 120 miles an hour.
Wow.
So it was a hard hit. But when you actually come back up and you stop, you look up, you see light coming out of the window, you knew you were alive, but everybody was still quiet. I think everybody was trying to put what's going on. Wow. Then is the time you have to move. You have to go at this point in time because water is coming immediately into the plane. Because the back end was actually how he hit backside first, then front side, then he skidded. The backside actually was ripped open, so water started coming in immediately.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So did at that point, did the flight attendants take over with their procedures and start, getting you guys out of the plane?
Well, 2 of the 3 did. The one who was supposed to be on the right side of the plane where I was exiting, no, she was injured. A piece of metal came up underneath from underneath the plane on impact. It sliced her leg. So she was injured. So they had to get her out of the plane quickly. So she was actually went out first class, got her out. So there was no one on the right side of the plane to manage it. So that's why, that's how I became the last passenger out of the plane, because my game plan, guys, my game plan was aisle up out. My thought was, if I survive this thing, I got to have a game plan to get out. And my game plan was aisle up out. Get to the aisle, get up to the exit, and get out. But when I got to the aisle, that changed everything for me, because I heard my mom start talking to me. And when I heard at that moment, when I hit the aisle, was my mom saying in the back of my head, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And to me, one of the greatest things my mother always did for all myself and my sister and brother was she made her kids make decisions when they were young and have consequences. So she didn't say, do this. She said, if you do the right thing, which was totally up to me. I could have gotten out of the plane, but the right thing to do is help other people. I knew I was alive. So that's why I climbed over the seats towards the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help. And the back of the plane was moving pretty quick. I mean, in the back of the plane, it was like chest deep in water. So people were moving. So I got behind the last person and just started making my way out. And the back of the plane was already submerged underwater.
Wow.
So it was dark. So you started to feel your way out. But then you saw a light on the right side of the plane when it was 10F, the door 10F, like, I'm out of here. So I started to get out, but then I looked up. There was no room on the wing or the boat for me. That's why I was inside the plane waist deep in 36-degree water for roughly 7 minutes.
Wow.
That was going to be my next question, was how long was the plane actually up and floating before it was totally submerged and nobody could be in it anymore?
It was roughly 24 minutes. I was out with between 7 and 8 minutes, but the plane was like straight up at 24 minutes. So,
gotcha.
Where I was, it was about, at that door is about knee to waist deep of water already.
Wow.
So, I was holding on to the lifeboat because the lifeboat was floating out into the river because of the currents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was holding on, and there was a picture of me holding on to the lifeboat and holding on to the plane. And that's why I was in the plane for 7 minutes until I felt the plane shift. And what happened was, I found out later, I didn't know then what happened. I found out later one of the boats was part of the rescue, which was a tugboat. As he was backing out, he hit the front of the plane. But that's when the plane sort of shook. And that's the first time I felt water go up my back. I'm like, I got to get out of here. This thing's going down like Titanic, man.
Yeah.
I got to get out. That's when I jumped down, swam to the closest boat that I could find, which had to be the end of that wing.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the response time of everybody getting there sounds like it was within 10 minutes also.
Oh, yeah. The first of the first responders was the New York Waterways, and they were there in roughly 2 to 2.5 minutes.
Wow.
That's quick. Yeah.
Very quick.
It's a good spot to land a plane.
And, they always say the captain goes down with his ship. So Captain Soley, who was the pilot of the plane, right?
Yep.
Did you ever see him at all, hear him at all after impact, or?
He was the last person out of the plane. I was the last passenger out.
Sure. Yeah.
He was the last, but and based on when I didn't see him at all, but based on what I heard, he was walking up and down to make sure that everybody was off the plane. So he did exactly what you expect the captain to do.
Oh, yeah.
Outstanding.
That actually leads into one of the questions that we have for you as well, now that we have kind of the outline of that flight. Looking back, what leadership lessons did you witness from Captain Sullenberg and the crew that day?
Well, I think, he kept his head. And that's one of the things I talk about in part of when I talk about, when I speak, I talk about leadership. One of the things you have to do when all this stuff hits the fan, you have to keep your head. And I think that's one of the things he did extremely well. I think I and other people did that well too. Because if you start losing it, right, and all of a sudden all your focus goes to that.
Yeah.
But if people keep their heads and just, pay attention to instruction, leaders step up, right? Step up and be able to lead when those times come. So I think one of the things he did extremely well, and I think myself and other people did really well, is we kept our heads when all this stuff was changing around us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's obviously, we actually just did a recording on fear and what fear looks like, and how fear can ultimately dictate the overall outcome of whatever situation you're in. And obviously, what you went through is a fear I think most people have when they fly, of a plane going down. And to live it and hear you say the really, not to put words in your mouth, but one of the reasons that we all had the outcome that we had was because we kept our heads and didn't let fear necessarily rule over the situation that you're presented with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, and I share this. I think the leaders stepped up when they had to step up. Like on the right side of the plane, there was nobody handled the door, so I did. Just
Yeah.
because that, but one of the things I write about in my new book, I actually show the frameworks. I re-engineered what happened that day to really what happened, break it down for people. Is that, when things like this happen, you have to be able to make a decision, right? And even all through that experience, those 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes where he had to make his decisions on what he had to do. I had to make a decision what I had to do, right? So I think the ability to be able to make a decision is one of the greatest traits of leadership. Because a lot of people won't make a decision because they're afraid to make the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so those people who can make a call when all stuff's breaking loose around you, like he did, and I believe I did, some other people did, I think that had a lot to do from that outcome of that day. Also, I also think the passenger makeup had a lot to do with that day. I actually didn't know that so I actually got to talk to another captain when I was in Orlando, Florida. I don't know if you've ever been to Orlando at the airport.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and and I didn't think about this until he said it to me, because at that point in time I was getting the opportunity to speak to captains all the time because they want to hear what happened, right?
Yeah.
And he said something to me that day that woke me up, guys. I mean, it woke me up and gave me another perspective on what happened that day. He said, even if I could do what your captain did here, if same thing happens, we go up, we get hit, I got to put this thing down in the lake, right on the ocean, people die. I said, well, I don't understand. If you could do the same thing, he said, so look around you. What kind of people fly out of Orlando? Now, there are a few business people like me, of course.
A lot of
But most
families.
of them, but you have tourists, right? Tourists, right? They're going to see Disney World and Sea World and all this stuff. They're not used to flying.
Yeah.
So what kind of passenger were on your plane that day out of New York? And most of the people were business people, right?
Yeah.
Flying out of New York, with a few people who were there for tourism. So he said that had a lot to do with that outcome. And I think that's exactly correct. I said we had the right butts in the right seats that day.
Yeah.
No one panicked, right? No one lost their heads. People make decisions, right? People could make, because people at that point, I think a majority of the people on that plane they were making the call what's best for themselves at that moment. They weren't waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Which had a lot to do with the outcome.
Were there any children or families on the flight?
There was one family on the plane that day with a couple of small children, correct?
But just one. That's a miracle in itself.
Yeah, I was going to say 90% of the people on the plane were business people.
Wow.
You're going home, late afternoon, flight out of New York, right? Banking, financial services, New York, are coming home. People like me. So, yeah, I think that had a lot to do with the outcome that day.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. One thing that I noticed that's a commonality between you and Captain Sully and other good leaders, I would say, is the selflessness. Like, he was the last one off the plane. You expect that out of a captain, but individuals like yourself who went back to kind of herd the crowd forward and be sure that everyone else made it out before yourself. That's a very important trait of a leader, and a good thing that we can all aspire to be is more selfless. Put others before yourself, and if somebody might need help back there, you're capable and strong and can do what needs doing, to the best of your ability, at least.
Well, thank you. I think one of the things I write about and speak about is, in my book, Moments Matter, my first book I wrote, I talked about all these moments in your life are there for a reason and purpose. They teach you these lessons when you're young, right? And you may never, ever need them. But then there may be that one moment, right? That one moment in life when all of a sudden you learn something when you were 12 years old that had to come and serve you at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it was leadership, me, it was swimming. I learned to swim, right? I had to swim. I swam across a river when I was in Boy Scouts, which gave me the opportunity. When I had to, I could step up and do it, right? So I think that's why I think all the moments in our life are there for a reason and a purpose, and they serve us.
Yeah.
And they may not serve us during a plane crash, but let's go back another example about the captain, the selflessness of the captain. A few months later, I think it was maybe a year later. Remember that cruise ship that was in Italy that went ashore, right? Crashed.
Yep.
And the first person out was the captain.
Wow.
You left everybody on the boat.
Wow.
So you contrast that to what, the leadership we had on our plane, where people stepped up and handled stuff, right? And made sure everything was handled before they got off the plane. That gives you a very big contrast of what, that person on that boat, he was a captain in name only.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. How old were you when the plane crash happened?
48.
Wow. So for the 48 years before that, you were being silently and unknowingly prepared for that moment.
Correct.
That's
Everybody on
incredible.
that plane was, I mean, look at his story. You saw the movie Sully, right? I mean, he learned to, glide planes, right?
Yeah.
Back when he was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
He was he did crop dusting. He learned his plane in Texas, right? Flying those small planes and gliding planes. So let's just think that one moment when he had to figure out, and when he learned how to glide a plane when he was 20 years old or whatever, right? All of a sudden, when this moment comes, when he's 58 and he's got to glide a plane, with 155 people on board, he's got to do that one skill he learned when he was 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? What does that tell you? These moments are there to teach you something. Don't take any moment just like it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That one moment may teach you something you need later in life.
That's so true.
I love it.
So everybody take us from, you swam to the life raft, and then the life raft. How did you disembark the life raft? Like, what was that process like?
I never got on the life raft. I was the last passenger out of the plane. So I jumped in the river and swam after when I felt the water, go up my back.
Okay.
So I never got on the lifeboat. No,
So
I swam
to a boat?
I swam to the first ferry I could find, which is into that life raft.
I misunderstood when you said boat. You never made it to a life raft. You swam to an actual boat to get you ashore.
That's right.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay. How long of a swim was that approximately?
Approximately 15 yards. And I tell people it's the longest 15 yards swim of my life. I was fully clothed in 36-degree water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's cold.
So, but fortunately, I learned to swim when I was, 5, 6 years old.
Okay.
Right. So
yeah,
that skill I learned, like I said, and I actually repeated it in Boy Scouts when we swam across the river at summer camp one year. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And so who would never thought that I had to swim across the river, one day out there being the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Once I come back, 30 some years later, I had to do it to save my life.
Right. That's crazy. I personally do ice baths a lot. And did you ever do ice baths before this, or?
I did. Now I do cryotherapy, but before, yes.
Okay. Yeah. That cold stimulus is also another preparation. You never know when you may end up in ice cold water. Right. I mean, I'm a big duck hunter, and I'm on the water a lot, and being in the cold water doesn't scare me quite as much anymore after being exposed to it.
Yeah.
But it's still very humbling, I'll tell you that.
Well, every morning I swim, the water, it's cold when you jump in, but yeah, you're right. After you've had enough, you're acclimated enough.
Yeah.
You can get that shock, but then at least you're mentally prepared for it, right?
100%.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good. So then after that, like most people, when they survive some form of a traumatic event, they have some sort of processing internally. What did that look like for you as far as just dealing with that type of stress once you got ashore and everything settled down?
Yeah, that was, there was a lot of things hitting me at that time. My company wanted me to go back to work, which I did, right? I was getting asked to do a lot of media, which I did. I had a family and trying to figure that out. So there's a lot of things hitting me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting now it's about, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago, 2016, about 10 years ago now, I was approached by someone who was writing an article for AARP magazine. Now, AARP magazine, what that, that's magazine page for old people, right?
Yeah.
And I said, why do you want to write an article about me, right? I can't teach old people anything, right? They've already done. They said, you did something, you actually grew from a traumatic experience instead of going into depression like many people did.
Yeah.
He said, and there were a couple of universities that were doing a study on me about what's called PTG, post-traumatic growth syndrome. They want to find out, this article actually, I went through, how did I grow from this traumatic event instead of going into a depressed state like many people did? And so that's where I basically went back and re-engineered again. The things that I did, not only get through it, but grow from it. And so you can actually grow from something like this instead of going into a depression or even worse. Like we were talking about what I do for the Navy SEALs and Special Ops, I was swimming for them, for those folks who are transitioning out, who are falling on some hard times.
Yeah.
So there's strategies on how to grow instead of go to depressed state. And that's what I did this article about. And then it came out in a book called Jolt.
Wow.
Very cool. The that concept of taking what you learned and giving it back, that goes back to the selflessness. I mean, you are trying to help others through this situation. I mean, everybody can't, hopefully will never be on a plane that goes down in the river, but you're going to pull the experiences that you had from that and the lessons that you learn and try and pass that on to others. It's another example of selflessness, that good leaders are selfless and they're trying to pull people up with them, not tear people down. They want everybody to step up and level up. Like we say here at Suffer Up, we want to level up spiritually, mentally, and physically. And so I love that. What you mentioned, the what you're doing with the Navy SEALs. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, thank you. I started back in 2021 when I heard from my friend I mentioned, who was my Navy captain friend, about what was going on, the suicide rate of people transitioning out during COVID and right after. And I was appalled. I was like, how are these SEALs and all these special operators who've served our country, and now they're going through that challenging time, so they opt for something not very good. What could I do? And so I was approached to go back into the Hudson River and go back and swim the Hudson River to raise money and awareness for this. So that's what I did in 2021 for the first time. It's a Navy SEAL swim from New Jersey to the Statue of Liberty to Ellis Island to New York City, and then ending up at the 9/11 Memorial to raise money and awareness. So it's like, here I am going back into the Hudson River where I almost died.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many levels, guys, of this. Yes, I wanted to raise money, but now I had to face my own fear of getting back. But I wanted to show my kids how you face fear.
Yeah.
And that was actually the second reason I did it. I wanted to show my kids and other people, when you face something like this, hey, after you go back and you face it and have to overcome it. So I did that, and we raised a lot of money, which I'm very grateful for. But I've done that twice in the Hudson River, and now twice more in the Pacific Ocean with the special operators. And we're doing it again September 19th this year with special operators. Now we're going to go do it this year in Fiji to really now make it more global for people to see how to do this. So it's been a mission of mine, because I think people need to understand and see that, because I think one of the things I believe in is everybody in their life will have what I call a personal plane crash moment. Something's going to happen. It may not be a literal plane crash like I went. It may be cancer, maybe a car accident, right? They may have a loss of a family member. Something's going to happen. How do you overcome that? And that's one of the major reasons I do what I do today, is helping show people how to do that.
Yeah. It's so cool that you said all that, because it drives home. We've said it multiple times on here, and it's quite honestly in the name of who we are, Suffer Up. Like, people ask us, like, what does Suffer Up mean? And it's not that we're necessarily called to suffer, but you're going to have hardships, like you say, and you can either take that hardship, grow. And I've never heard of post-traumatic growth, but that's like really encouraging to hear, because it made a lot of connections in my head. We both have stories. Everybody has a story, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, you can take that and grow from it, or you can just fall on your face, have pity, and all the other things that can come with that. And so we want to find that purpose in our sufferings, or in our hardships, or in the trials of this life. Find the purpose, move it forward, and how can I take this situation and make it the best possible outcome after the fact. And so that's really, really good.
Well, that's one of the reasons I built what I call the resilience framework. It's a matter of 4 different frameworks I built since the Miracle on the Hudson on about how resilience. And resilience isn't meaning bouncing back to me. It means all those things you prepare, so you're mentally you're mentally focused and emotionally focused to be able to handle it when something happens. And the second thing you mentioned earlier, which I believe was really, if you look at the bigger picture, what happened that day on January 15th, is faith.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I don't know how people go through life without some kind of faith. You can have whatever kind of faith you want. But I think that day there was a bigger calling of what was going on, because how do you have all these things come together like it did? I mean, the right captain, the right passengers, in the busiest place in the world during rush hour, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest media center in the world. And it's still the most tweeted event in history.
Wow.
How does this happen if there's not something bigger
That's
going
crazy.
on? So,
Yeah, as far as the question, what do you think was truly revealed to you about your faith in that moment?
Thank you for that question, because the first interview I did for a magazine after this was with a gentleman named Rick Warren, and he had a magazine called Mission Focused Leadership, no,
Hmm.
Mission Focused Purpose. And he interviewed me, and that was the question he asked me. And I tell people, I said, interview my minister. And I want you people to see this. This wasn't a Saul to Paul moment for me. This wasn't like all of a sudden I didn't believe and now I believe. Oh, I always believe, but this is now a strong reference for faith for me.
Yeah.
So when things get tough, right? And things do get tough, right? I mean, every day something, I mean, every 15 minutes, this world's changing. I mean,
Yeah.
so, I mean, if you don't have some resilience and faith right now, you're not going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a strong reference for my faith that when things get tough, as long as I keep my head, manage my state, keep my head, and know that there's something bigger out there that's going to help me. Like my mom said, if you do the right thing, God will help you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was the calling from my mother. I think my mother was my guardian angel that day, and she was up there in heaven saying, okay, you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And so, it's, I believe I'm a Christian, so I believe there's a bigger calling.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's really good. You mentioned earlier on the days of that, the events of that flight, about how leaders kind of came up through the ranks, and such as yourself, right? Like, you rose to that occasion, even though you were not a actual formal leader in that moment. Like,
Right.
seat 15A, you said, like, that's not a captain's seat, right?
Right.
So, you say that you don't need a title to lead, but can you explain what leadership looks like for just the everyday person when those moments come?
Yeah, my new talk is about leading without authority, because on the plane that day, there's really one person had authority, and that was the captain. So people would look to him for leadership, but there are other people on that day that had to step up, and they had no authority whatsoever, but they could give direction. And what I really mean by that is this: they give certainty in the most uncertain times.
Mm.
And the person who has that certainty in the uncertain times becomes the leader. It doesn't matter if your title is I'm dog catcher or I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
There were CEOs on that plane that, I'm sure that led, but maybe in that moment they didn't give certainty, right?
Yeah.
So I think the people on that plane who gave certainty to other people on certain times were the leaders that stepped up and led without authority.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, it's laced in so many leadership literature, such as what you're saying as well. Like Jocko talks about it, like making a decisive action. And in my line of work, also as a fireman, like there's often times
Yep.
when the lieutenant isn't there, but empowering people to make decisions, and also then step up and lead when it's time to do so. A lot of times in a lot of corporate worlds, it's just not, that culture is not bred into it.
No, it's not.
However, it's such a valuable tool to empower your employees, your crew members, your teammates, whomever, to make those decisive decisions and empower them to do so.
Well, one of the things you also learn is this. Thank you for that. Is there are times as a leader you have to check your ego at the door. Because one of the things I learned beforehand, but really came true on that day, was there's some other people there have better skill sets than me to handle things. Right? I can handle my skill set pretty well, but other people there can handle their skill set, had better skill sets than me to handle certain situations. So, I think there's one part of leading without authority is know when to check your ego, right? It's okay. There are other people here who have a better skill set at this thing that has to happen. Step back, let them lead at that moment. And so I think it happened probably 2 or 3 times. I would see on the plane likewise that sometimes I had to step back and say, you know what? Let this dude handle it, right? Because he's probably better than I am right now.
Oh, definitely.
What are some daily habits that we or our listeners can take from your experience to help build resilience before it's tested, and to help build leadership when it's needed?
I think I really believe I have a daily rituals, and one of the things I do every day is, of course, I pray in the morning, but also I listen to something very positive every morning. And I listen to a lot of books. I don't read many books anymore. I listen to books. That way I can get through 1 or 2 books a week. So that way, I'm putting good stuff in my head in the morning. This is a habit that helps me to show up for my team and my clients. And especially when I go on stage, they don't want somebody down and out. They want somebody who's got energy. So I would say one of the biggest habits that I've done for years is I listen to something positive every morning and I journal my thoughts every morning from the previous. Now I have a record of and it's called the gain and the gap. And a lot of people just quick ideas. A lot of people live in the gap where they wish they had things in their life, but they're not there yet. So they get down on themselves instead of saying, and then living in the gain where it's like, look how far I've come. So journaling for me is a way that I can stay in the gain where I can how much I've accomplished. Yeah, I may not be where I want to be right now, right? Because there's things I want to accomplish. I'm not there yet. But look how far I've come. And as long as I stay in the gain, I'm mentally in the game. I'm mentally in the game at that point in time.
It's easy for us to stay in that gap too, because the game keeps changing. If somebody wants to make $100,000, then they want to make $1 million, then $1 billion. And you keep moving the goalpost on yourself and you forget to look back and see how far you've come.
See, I think you're exactly right. Because one of the things I talk about is, the mission never changes. The tactics may change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the mission never changes. And I think, I actually learned that when I had the opportunity to escort a gentleman named General Norman Schwarzkopf many years ago. And he was telling me how they won the war in Iraq. I asked him a question. How do you win the war in Iraq so quick? And he won, 69 days or whatever, right? Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And he basically said he had to every day remind his people in the field what the mission was. And the mission was kicking Saddam out of Kuwait. It wasn't taking over Baghdad, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't that. It was kicking Saddam out of Kuwait. He said every day I had to keep reminding the troops, people in the field, of the mission. And that taught me a great lesson. If I can just stay on my mission, the tactics change, right? Things I do, people I serve, they change, but the mission never changes.
Yeah, that's really good.
I love that.
On a recent ultra run that we did, we were pacing somebody, and we had a plan, for each checkpoint. Like, we want to hit this checkpoint at this time, or aid station at this time, and then that didn't happen. And then we're going to hit it at this time. Then that didn't happen. It was just with the nature of ultra marathons. And I said to him, the guy that I was pacing, our friend Mark, I said, the goal never changes, but the plan could change.
Right.
And it's that you could similar saying, different vocabulary, that although he didn't hit the benchmark he wanted at that, he still hit the goal, and that was crossing the finish line.
That's right.
And his story was remarkable. We have an episode on that as well. You can go back and listen to it. But yeah, the plan the goal never changes, but the plan can change as well. So I love that. It changes
a lot now, especially where the world is right now. That's a change. It changes now. Every 15 minutes. I tell my team, I told somebody last week, one of the leaders, I said, I used to do annual plan. I do quarterly plans now. That's it. The world's changing too fast, man. I can't keep up, right? So I can just keep my mind on a quarter, not a year, and at least I can manage 13 weeks, right? So
yeah, that's so true.
You got a big vision, but you can't plan for that vision because it's a moving target.
Man, things are moving to AI right now, especially things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? It's wild how we've changed. Even think about how far we've come from 2000 to now, 26 years. It's incredible. And we're now doing a video podcast recording with somebody across the country.
That's right.
It's insane.
Yes, it is.
So Dave, you talked about how you help raise money for the Navy SEALs and different things. What has the entire experience of the Hudson and just your life in general, what has that taught you about legacy building? We're all men of faith here, and we know that one day we're not going to be on this earth anymore. And so how do you live your life now to leave a legacy later?
Well, that was the question my mentor, Bill, in 1997. What happened was he called me to his office. It was April of 1997. He called me to his office here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when your mentor or somebody of that ilk says, I need to see you, you show up, right? You drop everything and show up. And I went over to his office, and he said, I got a couple of things I want to tell you. And the boy, I got lung cancer. Now, Bill smoked unfiltered Camels since the 20s. So it wasn't a surprise, but, still, the dude's dying, right? The dude's dying. But then he went over to his desk, and he opened his desk up. Now, I mentioned this earlier. He brought out these handwritten notes he wrote in 1929 about how to be successful. He laid them on my lap right here. He said, hey, listen, I want to give this to you, but you got to promise me one thing. I said, what? He goes, do not let this die with you. And that's the legacy. See, he was passing his legacy on to me. And now I'm taking all the things that I've learned, not only from him and my parents and Tony Robbins and other things. Now, this is my legacy to leave it on with somebody else. So one of the things I'm doing right now, guys, and I put this out in the public eye, I'm looking for somebody to leave this legacy to, so I can teach them everything that I've been taught, right? To take this legacy and build on it to leave it to somebody else. Because this is what I made a commitment to. And very candidly, for 20 years, I did not do it. And I became ashamed. I made a promise because the number one thing my dad taught me, probably the best thing he ever taught me is be a man of your word. And, I wasn't. I did not fulfill, but now I'm fulfilling. So the legacy, this is my legacy. Doing things like this with you. I'm looking for somebody right now who wants to come with me. And for next year, I can teach them everything. So I'm now preparing that person to be the next person to leave this next legacy. So we're all, if I could, I end all my talks with this. You are expected to mentor somebody. It's not a should. It's a must.
Yeah.
Because once you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
So find somebody to mentor right now, and you can leave everything behind because that's your legacy.
Yeah. That's so good. And mentorship, and as being the mentor, you learn so much as well, passing down those things. And things are revealed to you in those conversations, the power of a spoken word. And that's really powerful, Dave. I appreciate that.
Dave, I've got a few rapid fire questions for you.
Let's go.
Before we close out here. What is the hardest thing that you've willingly chose to do since the crash in the Hudson?
Go back in the Hudson and swim with the Navy SEALs for 3.2 miles. By far.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Physically, it was extremely demanding, but mentally, it was really demanding.
Definitely.
It was, people ask me, that is the toughest thing because it took me, I did this, guys. I had swam more than 25 yards since 1979. And in 100 days, I learned to swim 3.15 miles with going back in the Hudson River in 100 days. So I could show somebody how do you get an outcome in 100 days? I did it. By far the hardest thing I've done since the Miracle on the Hudson.
That's amazing.
What current challenge in your life is still stretching you today?
Is getting myself prepared to be able to take the next step for our company. That's the biggest challenge I've got right now is, and you never have enough cash, right? Cash can solve anything. Cash is a resource, right? But it comes down to asking a better question. And the question you have to ask yourself, and the question I ask myself, and it's helped me make this transition, is find the who's for the how. I don't have to do it all myself. There are people out there a lot better to do things that I do. I got to find them. So one of the things I do is I look for people I call wormholes, those people who can open up these avenues for you that you don't even know you have, and find those who's or those hows that I need to get done.
Outstanding. That leads right into my next question of who is someone that embodies resilience and leadership that our listeners should look into and that we should invite on the podcast next?
Well, I tell you what, I actually just had a conversation with her. Her name's Teresa Easler. There's two ladies. Teresa Easler is somebody who's a serial entrepreneur who's gone through the tough times, who's had resilience and built something from nothing. And the other lady I would say is Suzanne Lesko, who was my Navy captain swim buddy. She is just transitioned out of the Navy and now is trying to build her own self up. She's had a lot of resilience. And being a female, one of the first females that graduated Naval Academy, who had to go through that experience and then have a life, what she did, getting through the Navy. I see those are two ladies, guys, that I would say have a lot of resilience that I would look up to.
Very cool. And lastly, our staple question for guests on the podcast: what does the phrase "suffer with a purpose" mean to you?
It means that everybody in life's going to have to go through something. And, I'll relate back to faith because I think, this is the way I would explain it. Every day in Jesus' life was a picture dust and sunshine. He had some tough days, man. the dude has some tough days, right? I mean, listen, he has some great days, but he went to the cross for a reason. He had to suffer to get to the glory. Why should I feel anything different in my life and in your life? We're all going to have to go through those personal plane crashes to get to get ourselves to that glory, whatever our definition of glory is for ourselves, which is different for everybody, right? It might be $1 billion for somebody, right? It may be that I have a very successful and happy family, whatever that is for you. But you're going to have to go through some of that suffering to get through it. Because every day is not picture dust and sunshine.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. Well, Dave Sanderson, thank you so much for joining us on this episode today with Suffer Up. We asked that last question. I'll just close with this. We are hosting a 24-hour crucible course for men to help them find their unbreakable purpose. We're really excited about it. It's the first time we've done this. And so the link and all that will be on our link tree as well for people. If you are listening to this and you're like, man, I'm just moved and motivated by it, and I want to hone and find those purposes and adopt tactics and tools to be able to apply to my life, to be a better husband, father, CEO, leader, company man, entrepreneur, whatever it is. We're looking for those people. And so really excited about it. And we really appreciate you coming on with us, sharing your story, as miraculous and how amazing it was to hear that story and some of the lessons that you pulled from it. So thank you, Dave.
Thank you for having me today, guys.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Suffer Up podcast with Nate Ryan and our friend Dave Sanderson. We will have in the description of this podcast links to his books as well as his contact information. So if you'd like for him to come speak at an event, you can get in touch with him and book for him to come speak. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We love you all. And as always,
Suffer up.